What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing this week, man?
Doing well, dog. Doing well. How's it going?
It's going well. Made it to the movie theater this weekend. Not to see as many movies as you did, as it's usually the case. So you're putting in that grind, and I'm slacking. But you know, I saw a tweet that really described the experience well, where we're hitting that time of year where everything in the movie theaters is like prestige, Oscar level stuff, and all the previews are like dropping in January, and you just know it's like complete crap and gonna be huge.
Owen Emmerich's Moonfall.
Yeah, exactly. So always a fun time of year to be going to the movies. We're gonna be talking about, I think, two movies that we both found at least intriguing, if not good. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Licorice Pizza. Dave getting in those early showings of Paul Thomas Anderson's newest movie. We also watched some TV shows. But before we get to that, hit that subscribe button on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. And go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to follow the podcast any other way you would like to. We start in a sad place today, though, Dave, as over the break. I guess it was just a couple of days ago. Was it yesterday even?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
It's funny to say that because I feel like yesterday and the whole weekend in general is just a blur. And it also feels like I've read so many tweets, so many like articles or tributes to Virgil Abloh, who passed away at the age of 41 after a battle with cancer. That it just almost feels like I've been more present in hearing about him than just one day, and since his death. So it feels like a long time, a very short time, all mixed in one. And I mean, obviously, a shocking loss. Only 41 years old, titan of the fashion industry. Really, just a presence within hip hop culture and I think just culture in general. But what was your just like initial response in seeing the news?
Yeah, obviously very sudden, very sad. Similar, unfortunately, like Chadwick Boseman in terms of a non-publicized battle with cancer, in Virgil's case, a rare cancer. And then just like that, it's all gone, And just seeing all the outpouring, as you said, I think speaks a lot to him. As people know, we don't talk about high fashion and streetwear on the pod here, but Virgil was someone who managed to really transcend that in, I think, a meaningful way in music, in sports, in the art world, and of course in the fashion world. It always kind of this big thing, as as culture is, and just seeing all the people talking about him, really cool. Um, and I was just thinking about, like, again, not someone who's up on high fashion. I don't pay attention to Off White, his company. I'm not up on what he was doing to shepherd Louis Vuitton as the first black male, head of Louis Vuitton and whatnot. But what I did notice was how he kept popping up everywhere else, right? Look no further than his Genesis, right? Coming up alongside Kanye West. Uh, remember we talked about him last year on that Lupe Fiasco EP, where there was just some like speeches or talks Virgil had given being sampled at the end of those Lupe songs, right? And I think probably my favorite moment of all of this, right, apart from just seeing him with Kanye, seeing him with Rihanna or ASAP Rocky, what have you, Uzi, whoever it is, I loved how Drake referenced Virgil in his beef with Pusha T in Duppy Freestyle. I thought it was one of the best parts about that diss, where he made fun of Kanye for letting Virgil become bigger than him in the fashion world, out from under him. I thought that was a really smart thing to say when it comes to rap beef. But yeah, man, he's been around for only like 6 years in a major way, but it was just so busy, so involved, right? I mean, even album covers, something as simple as that, countless ones he's designed in hip hop. You know,
Yeah.
it's a sad loss, no question.
Yeah, his presence is just felt all over the place, especially within hip hop culture. And you know, and just kind of reading about his life and seeing that he was, he came up with Kanye. Obviously, they interned together at Fendi back in the early, I guess late thousands, aughts. Um, but to like see his rise and just see the reach he had, and it's so interesting to be talking about him a week removed from Young Dolph, right? Who um Young Dolph's death, I think uh, a lot of people were like shocked at just like the impact that someone like him had, and like a loss of a person like
Right.
him had, especially because like we as we talked about last week on the pod, he wasn't necessarily like the biggest name, but had just kind of like been making a lot of music and like subtly had,
Very regional.
yes, and I think subtly had started to mean a lot to people. Virgil is like almost like a bigger than life type figure in a sense. Like you mentioned, all of his accomplishments within the hip hop world and just and in the fashion world, especially within a short period of time, it almost feels like he's the type of person that just was always like there, kind of like in the
Yeah.
consciousness. Like, oh yeah, he's just like this titan of the industry. So to see someone like him, just kind of go, having this rare cancer, I believe it was cardiac angiosarcoma or something along those lines.
Yeah,
Um,
something like that.
it's just a reminder of, even the people who are seen most powerful and infallible are just people in the long
Yeah.
run. It's cool to see his impact. I think obviously a very inspirational figure, especially for the Black community. And I think it's hard to like see him and see like the clothes that you would see him wearing, and a lot of the pictures of him, and just to see how pretty much like every rapper and every person hip hop and all these athletes style very similarly to him, if not directly in his like image. So obviously incredibly influential, even though I'm not well versed in the fashion world.
Yeah, I mean, just the fashion stuff, right? He didn't study fashion. He kind of just, as you said, slightly by chance connecting with Kanye, getting his way in that way. But um, you can ask the people deep in fashion. It's not like everything he did was the most critically well received from a fashion critic standpoint either. But he took a lot of chances and he broke down a lot of barriers. And I think that's why he really connected with so many people, so many young people in particular. Off White, again, it's only been a few years, but it's such a popular brand that's referenced constantly at this point. But yeah, it's just weird to think that you won't see him anymore at this point, just because he was always around. He was always doing things. He was so busy, and that was, I think, a constant of a lot of the obituaries and whatnot. It was all the hats he was wearing at this time, and still trying to work as much as normal despite battling this sickness in private. It's sad.
Absolutely. Just want to give a quick shout out to him. One of the things I saw people talking about that he recently did, as recently as last year, he created a scholarship called the Virgil Abloh Postmodern Scholarship for um, Black students in the fashion world. He raised $1 million to go towards funding the education for people in that sphere. Just like a really cool thing to do, and I think a good way to keep his legacy going on. So hopefully we continue to see the tributes pour out. Always sad to see someone like this go, but also I think just a testament to the fact that there's these type of people out there making a huge difference. So RIP, huge rip to Virgil. Let's move on to something a little different though, Dave. We talked about Wheel of Time a few weeks back. And I think I was definitely not as high on it as you were, but I think there was like some optimism that maybe this is going to be a successful show. I was not definitely not as high on it as you were, but I think you actually probably predicted right. Wheel of Time doing pretty well according to Amazon Prime, has been one of the top 5 best TV releases for them. They don't give the numbers, just like Netflix. They can tell us anything that they want to with all this stuff. but it's obvious that they view it as a success, and so now they're going to be investing in more sci-fi shows. And what's the next one, Dave?
Yeah, so alongside the news that Wheel of Time was doing well, according to Amazon, again, asterisk supply, also came news that Amazon was in the process of dropping a major bag to adapt the Mass Effect video game series into a television series. Wheel of Time, the forthcoming Lord of the Rings, obviously that's fantasy. Mass Effect is, of course, science fiction in space. And also one of the most critically well received video game series of the last 10, 20 years. Mass Effect 2 in particular is my favorite video game of all time. So this is a very appealing prospect to me, appealing prospect to I think a lot of people, just because the appeal, the enduring quality of Mass Effect, in theory, could translate very well to a series. Amazon knows a little bit about making a space show because they, of course, picked up and continued The Expanse after Sci-Fi wanted to get rid of it. And they already know what it's like to spend a lot of money on IP, of course, with Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time. Now, of course, the question, the continuing thought everyone will have, of course, is that video game adaptations are not the strongest from a critical standpoint when we look at history, right? And if reception to the upcoming Uncharted film with Tom Holland is any indication, that'll probably continue in the short term. But still, a Mass Effect show, much like even a Harry Potter show at HBO Max, just like the prospect, the idea of it is just really appealing. If, of course, it's done right and with care.
So, as you think about this, I mean, I'm not as big of a video game person as you are, and knowing a lot of the issues that have come from trying to adapt video games into movies specifically, television, we have a little bit, I think, less of a, uh, I don't know, history with. So,
It's true.
do you feel like Mass Effect is the type of show that is easily adaptable, like to given the premise and the storyline?
Yeah, it's awfully funny to think about that too, because a big thing about those games, series of RPGs, is that your choices affect the future storytelling, your player choices, and because of that, the main character, Commander Shepard, can be a bit of a different character depending on how you play the character. Some of that's low service level, male or female, but other than that, it's like you can be a good guy, you can be a bad guy, you can go back and forth depending on how you want to do it. Uh, Obviously, they would have to decide how they want to treat our central character when making any kind of scripted show. That's obvious. But I think the overwhelming appeal of Mass Effect is that it was an original science fiction world that was just really engrossing, incredible world building, very vast, and it was the nothing had brought me back to the feeling of Star Wars the way Mass Effect did when I first played it. And I think that, of course, is the appeal. If you really invest and think about trying to make the Mass Effect world into a show, I think that could suck people in. And you could probably take some liberties with the story. To me, I would be more rooting for just the world to be adapted in a meaningful way. And I mean, again, that'll take money, right? There's all these really appealing, layered alien species in Mass Effect, and they all and like in how they in the politics and everything. It's all very detailed. There's a lot of lore there, meaning there's a lot to potentially adapt. I think they just have to really commit to it. So obviously, this is before they haven't even closed the deal yet. So we're so far away from writers being attached, let alone casting. So doesn't mean this is even going to happen. But someone with the funds to pull it off, like Amazon, is probably one of the better people in theory. Hopefully they pick someone who likes the source material to try and tackle the script, tackle the development, because I'm sure it'll be a long development too. But just the idea of it's very, very appealing.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like it's at the least a few years away from actually being made. But just kind of speculating, because this is what we do when we hear news like this, and just kind of dreaming. Do you have anyone in mind that you would want to be cast as the lead as Commander Shepard? If
Yeah.
well, why don't you give me one male and one female?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I have a feeling they'd probably do Fem Shep, which
Hmm.
is, the default on the marketing was often the male shepherd, but Fem Shep was very popular with players as well. That's a great question. Obviously, you're probably going to pick someone pretty new, pretty in vogue, right? Man, someone with action chops. You could pick anyone, man. I could see Florence Pugh crushing this shit if she found a way into her
Ooh,
schedule. I don't know
we're
if
gonna be
she's
talking
ready to
about
go
her in a
back to
minute.
TV after Little Drummer Girl, but um, she comes to mind. Casting all the aliens would probably be a bit more challenging too, because a lot of them are really layered characters that you would need like really good makeup and mocap and everything. So that would probably take a lot of planning. But yeah, being a male shepherd, I don't know. Let's just go back to who we talked about for James Bond. Pick anyone, honestly. Shepard's not the most emotive guy in his male iteration too, so you could take some liberties to switch it up a little bit.
Well, why don't I throw a name out here for you? Someone that we've seen have some action chops. Elizabeth Debicki. How
Hmm,
would you feel if she were to be cast as
interesting.
Commander Shep? She's a little
Yeah,
more reserved in her
yeah,
her acting approach.
yeah. No, that's not bad. That's not bad. She's very tall. I wonder if that would factor into
That's true.
having her be the lead of an action. So I don't know. Um, yeah, no. I mean, I'm a huge fan of hers. Basically, anyone I'm a fan of, I feel like they could pull it off.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of any like males come to mind. Just yeah, I mean, anyone in the Bond shortlist could handle this, of course.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where it goes with this. Only knowing Mass Effect from the I think the size of the franchise, and like obviously I think the critical reception is pretty well known even for people who haven't played. It's exciting because I think while fantasy, and I know I was genreing Wheel of Time earlier. Fantasy is not necessarily always my favorite genre. I'm a little bit more willing to give sci-fi a shot. So definitely
Yeah.
interested to see where this goes. Um, why don't we keep moving forward though to something that's a little genre bending, I would say. Cowboy Bebop, the live action adaptation. We're not reviewing the original anime series at this point. There's plenty written about it, and
Myriad
plenty.
video essays on YouTube. Should
Yes.
you wish to dive in, a lot of people love Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, and I think rightfully so. This is something you turned me on to just recently, and we talked anime a little bit more recently on the pod.
Yeah,
And
usually films that come up.
and so when you mentioned that they were doing a live action adaptation, and you wanted to talk about it, I was like, oh, I'll get back into the old series, check it out. It's all on Netflix right now.
Mm.
And I was really just blown away by it. I think my limited experience with anime kind of had me expecting it to be a little bit more like, I don't know, like toned up in a sense, and just kind of
Right.
like out there. But this was I mean, the mix of like Western noir
Yeah.
together just like really blew me away. And I liked how it had like an overarching story it was telling, while also basically being like bottle episode after bottle episode, and just like, kind of like adventure of the week type stuff. And it's really hard to not just like really start to love all the characters in that show. Um, so I mean, I thought it was great. The original. Well, tell me why you love the original so much, though.
Yeah, the original Cowboy Bebop from 1998. I actually obviously saw it way later in life as an adult, but it's my favorite anime of all time. And just, yeah, basically those reasons you're saying. It's kind of a common appeal. It's also very simple, but it's just amazing execution, impeccable world building, such a strong, commanding sense of style. It's just really fucking cool, dude. Like, you
Yeah,
can't fake that shit. And on top of that, like that vibe, that cool vibe is so consistent. Spike Spiegel, your lead character, just an iconic anime character, one of the best anime characters of all time, just oozes coolness, right? Just oozes charisma. And on top of that, like you said, 26 episodes, but it's not serialized in the slightest. There is maybe like 4 or 5 key in quotes plot development episodes or regarding Spike and Vicious, but for the most part, it's like you said, just these journeys. These in other animes they would be called filler episodes, but it's not filler in Bebop's case because it's always coloring in your characterization of our characters of the crew of the Bebop, and I just it's just so lovable. It's so easy to revisit that world building of like a future of our solar system, right? It's just so great, so cool, and I think me visiting it like later in life was really cool too because it was something I had like heard of, I had known about for years and years, but like I think as most people know, anime was just not the most accessible thing in the 2000s in the West. The way it became in the 2010s, like you said, Bebop is now on Netflix. Previously, it had been on Funimation, but like when I first heard of Bebop, it was not that easy to watch unless you knew someone with the DVDs, in the pre-streaming era. So to get to the point now where it's being adapted by Netflix, and meanwhile the original is so easy to see, obviously is a welcome change. Uh, but yeah, I love the original, and I was willing to give, I think willing to give Netflix a chance with the live action adaptation. And not that the track record of adapting anime is strong, it is anything but when it comes to making live action anime. Uh, think about how many directors have tried to make an Akira movie and they haven't even gotten, to the starting line, right? Uh, Dragon Ball Evolution film from 12 years ago. There's tons of examples of bad anime adaptations in live action, but just because I love Bebop so much, just seeing a new spin or a new twist on it, I was just eager to see how it, came to be, what it ended up being.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, one of the things that uh, hooked me about the live action adaptation is that it had some pretty interesting lead actors. John Cho, who we've seen in a lot of things. I think probably came up with Harold and Kumar, but has been in so much since then, and just I think an
He's on a
actor
good
we
run
really
right
like.
now, Searching,
Yeah,
Columbus, etc.
yeah, Searching, one that we both really liked. Mustafa Shakir,
Yeah,
who most notably from The Deuce recently. Really enjoy his character, and Daniela Pineda, who not someone I was super familiar with, but have obviously seen some things. She was in Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, so she's on the come up. So these three really interested me. Um, how did you feel about them being cast as like the main three from the original crew?
yeah. It's a good question. So I'd say generally, I like all three of them in the parts. I think clearly Mustafa Shakir is the star of the three. Like his jet is amazing. Honestly, like
Hmm.
it feels so true to the character. He has such a
Yeah.
great presence. His line readings are great. I thought he's a total slam dunk piece of casting. Notably, of course, switching the race here. Kind of funny. The character is, of course, called Jet Black, and now he's actually played
Hmm.
by a black man. That's funny. But I thought he was awesome. Really, the whole time. And I think I liked Pineda's energy as Faye. I think the script does changes some things about Faye, but I think
Yep.
she's pretty good. And Cho also, again, the script kind of changes some stuff, right? He's a lot more sarcastic in the live action adaptation, like more bluntly, like jokey, as like a response to people talking to him and stuff. I think Cho handles that pretty well. I think that the probably biggest issue, it's not even a Cho issue. I think it's just a live action issue. Is if you remember how like Spike would like fight people and stuff, right, with those really like high kicks and stuff. It's just some anime ass shit, man. It's really hard to translate anime action to live action.
Yep.
You know, and it's John Cho's fault. It's just like, I mean, unless you would cast like one of the guys from the Raid or something and just made this more like John Wick in terms of action. If you weren't going to do that, I don't really know how you could have got that across. But Cho definitely has like the presence and the energy you expect from like Bebop thematically, right? these feelings of loneliness and ennui and longing and all that. That's still present in the performances, which I like.
Yeah, I think they all were really solid. It's funny you mentioned like the high kick thing because they really do it in like the cold open of the first episode where he like throws the bullet up and kicks it into the guy's head or whatever, and then like they don't ever go back to that move again. So like here you go, and then we're never gonna touch this again. I think just like a hard, like you mentioned, a hard thing to adapt. But no, I really loved all of them. I would say I agree. I think Jet Black, played by Mustafa Shakir, is probably my favorite performance in the whole thing. Just brings such like a gravitas to that role, and especially like teetering the line between his being a father and his care for his child, while also having lost faith in the police system and just kind of like society in general, and trying to like toe that line of like optimism and hope for his daughter's future while also feeling so shitty about the rest of the world. Just really, I thought did that great. I'm thinking about the scene where he's like watching her dance recital while Spike is like fighting all the bad guys in the background, or all the guys trying to kill them in the background. Just really well done.
Yeah.
Faye, you mentioned that they changed some things in this, and I was wondering how you felt about those changes.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you're going to change a lot of things when you're adapting something, and I welcome the change. I don't want a carbon copy remake. There's really no point of doing that. So if you're boiling down a 26 episode anime series at 20 minutes pop to an 8 episode series that's like 40 minutes pop, obviously you're going to change things. So a lot of things are condensed, right? We meet Faye in episode 1 instead of episode 3. The Syndicate stuff rears its head right away. But also, I think the characterization of Faye is just slightly a little tweaked. I think part of it's just the script. Like, she comes off as more of a troll this time around, whereas in the anime, she was just kind of like lazy and at times like a little incompetent. But it all makes sense once you learn about her past and her lack of knowledge about her past, right?
Yep.
I feel like they kind of shortchanged her a little bit in the writing department for the Netflix adaptation. On the other hand, I like how they, she's not as overtly sexualized now as she was in the anime. That is a positive trait. And I still like the performance. I still like the energy, but I think a lot of times the script kind of lets her down. And I think that generally, like that's my biggest criticism of the adaptation is the script, because the show is now very, very serialized. And unfortunately, what that means is there's just a lot of Vicious and Julia, a lot of Syndicate stuff. Vicious is not a big presence in the anime.
No.
Pops up here and there in relation to Spike. But now he just has all this backstory that I don't think really amounts to much, right? We don't need all this build-up to him taking over the Syndicate. That's basically our first introduction to him in the anime. He's already taken over the Syndicate, with the coup and all that. So I just didn't feel like that change was executed well enough to be that kind of change, I mean, even Jet having a daughter, which is completely brand new. I wish it added a little bit more to it. Honestly, like, it comes up in the plot, but like I wish this adaptation had a little less plot, because that was one of the best things about the anime.
The hangs,
Yeah.
I still think it's a pretty fun hang. I did like seeing how they would pull in elements of certain episodes,
Right.
I obviously I think the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, where it's like that pure Western feel with the red eye and stuff, it's just like unassailably amazing episode of television, and so it makes sense they would want to put you back there in some way. And I think most of the first episode, if I'm remembering correctly, you kind of are there. There's definitely some changes to it, but I loved when like things like that would pop up when you're back in certain episodes or callbacks to certain moments. They had the nature terrorists or environmental terrorists pop back up in different ways, stuff like that. Yes, there you go. Were there any specific like adaptations like that or callbacks to the old episodes that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, and in episode 2, I liked how you got the Mushroom Samba guy popping back up in a really completely different role. I like the references to the Jupiter Jazz duo episodes, which was nice. Uh, yeah, I like the Red Eye nod as well, as you mentioned, the first episode anyway. They changed that a lot. Cool. I like that casino setup in the beginning on that like space casino. I love the shot when the coins are like falling on their face due to the gravity being messed up, right? Uh, that's all nice. I thought the our first introduction to our first connection with Spike and Vicious, where we have the reference to the Fallen Angels episode, where we had the iconic gun meets sword pose that we see. Don't know if that quite have a candle to how it's done in the anime, but overall, like I think the show is commendable for a lot of its like tonal shifts, especially when you remove it from the anime. Like if you try and not compare it to the anime, or if you're someone who doesn't even know what the anime is, I feel like you like it a lot more, which I think does speak to something, right? There's definitely like really good bones here, and I thought that the script was there's a little tighter, like some of the dialogue was pinched up, right, and some of the um, narrative was toned down a bit. I think you'd really have something. So it's really funny to see kind of a really wide range of response to this, right? There are people that think it's kind of impressive, and then there are anime fans who are just really displeased. And I'm not one of those as an anime fan. I definitely still have, some issues in quotes. Not like I'm offended or anything. Like obviously, like Ed is a character that's barely present at all in live action. Ed's also kind of barely present in the anime too, but more present. So that's a change. It's. I think one of my disappointments in Netflix more than anything is the production design. I think is really uneven. There's a lot of like scenes set outside where those exteriors look just really cheap and clearly like on a backlot, and that's not what I want from a world so expansive and
Vast.
inviting as Cowboy Bebop is an anime form. That's disappointment. This is disappointing, especially
Yeah.
given the Netflix budget this should have. So that's annoying.
Yeah. I think your criticisms are really valid, and I think I agree with your take that spending so much time with Vicious and Julia didn't really serve it too well. Like I'm thinking back to like the last two episodes of the series, right? And episode 9 is completely like plot catching you up on the relationship between Spike and Vicious, and it really just takes you away from the original three, Jet, Spike, and Faye, which is kind of who I just like hanging with the most on this show, and that's kind of where I want to spend the most time for sure. And yeah, I mean, you still get some of the being cowboys, going to get bounties, that sort of thing, but it's very much like a side part of the show. And I did kind of miss that element, um at least episode to episode. Also gotta say, not nearly enough Ein for me. We needed way more Ein to really, I think, pull the show together. But it sounds like, or at least it seemed like they're really setting it up for a season 2. um would you want to see a second season of this?
Yeah, I think a season 2 actually is even more appealing because we can just leave even more callbacks to the anime behind and try and do or like obvious, like if we can like lose like all some of that plot and just nod to more of the one-off episodes from the anime, that would be really appealing to me. Getting Ed in there more frequently as well. So yeah, I say why not? Go for it.
I mean, I hope we get a second season. I thought it was really solid. Definitely not a perfect show, but I think a lot to like here. And I think if you know it's related to anime or not, give it a watch, at least a couple episodes. I think you'll find something to enjoy with it. So, any last thoughts on Cowboy Bebop before we move on? Let's go check out Hawkeye then, because it premiered on Disney Plus Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Holiday season has arrived with your favorite Avenger, Hawkeye. And man, I've seen a lot of really positive reviews for this show. it's the first two episodes I think are a lot more a Haley Steinfeld showcase than a Jeremy Renner showcase for sure. I think there's also some things about the show I'm looking forward to, but do you agree with the critical reception so far that this seems to be a win, for Disney Plus?
Yeah, I guess that's a great question in terms of how you quantify a win, right?
Mm.
Uh, it's another Marvel MCU show on Disney Plus. Seems to be solid enough. To most people, that seems to be good enough as well, you know? So I was perfectly entertained the whole time. I don't know if I was wowed at any point, and I don't really expect to be wowed either, because we've seen a few of these at this point. So as long as I'm just enjoying it, that's kind of good enough for me. And I think this has a lot less plot ambition, thematic ambition than Falcon and the Winter Soldier did. So I think I'm more likely to be satisfied at the end with this lower stakes holiday in New York setting. I don't think it's like anything special. I thought WandaVision and Loki are clearly a step above this.
Yeah, I definitely think Loki and WandaVision are a step above this. This feels like you said. I think more in the Winter Soldier realm. Although I think it has some more interesting elements to me. It's funny because one of them we didn't even see in this, so I'm very, I guess I'll just say Florence Pugh. If you watch the end credit scenes of um, Black Widow,
Right.
is most likely coming after Hawkeye in some sense. So there's probably a very good chance she's going to be showing up in this, and I am excited to see Florence Pugh on TV again or on streaming now, doing whatever she's going to be doing with it with her character Elena.
Correct.
She's, I guess, the new Black Widow now. I also think just watching Tony Dalton be super charming and villainous is always a win. We loved him on Better Call Saul, and he's just bringing the schmarm, dude. Like he is just absolutely chewing every scene to a pulp, and it was just a pleasure to watch him. So I like him more than almost anything we saw in Winter Soldier for sure.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love Tony Dalton. I love this look for him as well, really cashing in on the critical cachet he justly received for Better Call Saul and will receive with the forthcoming final season as well. Very excited about that. Um, yeah, if anything, I thought like this setting, grounding this in New York around the holidays, it definitely felt like New York City, which is nice. I like how Kate Bishop's family with her mom, Vera Farmiga's character. Uh, I really liked how that all worked. She definitely felt like an affluent New York City socialite type person. I like that. Um, I guess for me, and I totally agree about looking forward to seeing Florence Pugh really in anything, but especially in this because she definitely stole the show in Black Widow. So that's all cool. And on the other hand, like you can't help but feel like this is just one of those like 6-hour movie type deals, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know how much like plot there really is to get in here, and it's definitely not a show that has the ambition as a TV show first, the way WandaVision did. So it's really just chilling, right? And if anything, it's not even a backdoor, just kind of a straight up pilot and introduction to Haley Steinfeld's Kate Bishop character, which I assume will become a anchor for the MCU to come. As the old guard leaves for this, growing new class of heroes. So in that regard, it's nice enough, and I think because Steinfeld's performance as Kate is really nice. Honestly, like I think she's has a great energy and precociousness. Like it seems to be working so far. I like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. But yeah, I mean, like plot wise, like we're not going to be wowed, I don't think, by the plot, but it's all good.
Yeah, well, I think to your point, it really is it's a show that has maybe like an hour to hour and a half of plot in it, but they're gonna fill it in with little side quests like going to a LARPing event and having Clint have to be taken down by the like head LARPer there, which I thought was pretty interesting. And silly for sure, and definitely enjoyed the silliness I think that shown through in a lot of these, whether it's the henchmen and their dumb lines or their idiocy, or Clinton Kate's back and forth and one liners. I think also were really well. Like we said, Tony Dalton just kind of being himself. He kind of brings like a charm and an essence, and a little bit of humor to his roles. So there's definitely a lot. There's enough to like here to keep me interested, I would say. I just I guess I'm just wondering, if are they gonna kill off Renner, like Barton? Are they gonna? Is that the plan here, to eventually kill him off?
It's a great question. They've killed off two old guard people thus far, in Downey and Johansson. So I'd probably bet against it, but I don't know.
I mean, Steve Rogers was kind of killed off.
Yeah,
he's an old man now.
Right. And we know we're getting Ruffalo in the She-Hulk show, so maybe it's a blueprint to come, right? Out with the old, in with the new kind of thing on TV. I guess remains to be seen. But yeah, I mean, like this it's just very Marvel-y, right? Like the humor, the action, everything's quite familiar, and that's why I think it's like it's totally fine, it's totally fun, it's good enough, But like, we've been awfully saturated with Marvel in 2021, And
there's
I'm
still
very
more
positive
to
on
come.
the first two movies anyway. The shows I think have been maybe the ambition of the shows hasn't been there yet for me overall. WandaVision had the ambition, didn't execute it at the end. But
I think Loki had the ambition too.
Yeah, I think Loki definitely has the potential to. They've already obviously confirmed that season 2. This again feels like awfully small stakes. You know what? Cool. It's fine.
Yeah. This is basically like, let's get Haley Steinfeld in here. Like, basically just passing of the torch type stuff.
And it's been inspired, or taking inspiration from the Matt Fraction Hawkeye comic run, which was so lauded, like 10 years ago or so. But again, like, I just don't think the MCU storytelling ambition is there to like transcend, right? We're really just setting up Kate, so it's fine.
Yeah. Just wanted to bring up real quick, last night tickets went on sale for Spider-Man No Way Home, and pretty much crashed all the ticket websites when they first opened. If you're in a major city, most likely to get tickets the first night is going to be quite hard for you at your local theater. The thirst for Marvel and MCU content is there. We're also now going to be getting confirmed Sony and Disney came to an agreement, so we'll be getting another Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy. So they're really banking on him as like the center, I think, of the Avengers moving forward. Him and Strange, seem to be really set up to be playing those lead roles of Steve Rogers and.
I'm less confident in Strange being an anchor, honestly.
Really, because it feels almost to me like he's been put at the center of all of this next phase. His like ties to the multiverse, which seems like where they're going and leaning into with pretty much everything, especially with Kang the Conqueror definitely being there. It feels like he's got to be a part of it some way.
Yeah, perhaps. He just doesn't seem like one of like the anchors moving forward. I feel like that's more of a lot of these new people, right? Shang-Chi, Florence Pugh, Haley Steinfeld, She-Hulk forthcoming. It'd be interesting to see how they thread that needle. And it's funny to hear this announcement of more Spider-Man films from Amy Pascal. I'm not surprised that Sony wants to continue the relationship, but wasn't too long ago where Tom Holland's like, if I'm playing Spider-Man still after I'm turned 30, I did something wrong. So I think they're going to have to really back up the Brinks truck for Holland to sign back up for more of these. He hasn't signed up yet. So, uh, by the other hand, like you said, there's such an appetite for Spider-Man, which makes complete sense. Spider-Man is the
Yep.
most popular Marvel character, has been the most popular Marvel character. Um, this
They will
movie,
back up
the
the
trailer
Brinks truck
was,
for him.
yeah, the trailer was so widely received, so I'm not
Mhm.
surprised. And Holland, it's not like he's done too much with his limited opportunity outside the MCU, right? We didn't love Chaos Walking, didn't love Cherry. We probably won't love Uncharted. On the other hand, I
Keep
respect his
cashing them
desire.
checks.
Yeah, I
Just do
respect
it,
his
Tom.
desire to diversify his career, though.
Uh, Tom, just do it what you're good at, man. He's by far the best Spider-Man we've had, in my opinion. So just keep doing it, man. You're crushing it. But yeah, it's there's a lot of interesting subplots with it moving forward. It just feels like it's an unstoppable force, and I'm just kind of waiting to see what's going to be the thing to really be the first major stumbling block. I mean, you would think with the TV shows, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not that great. Eternals just came out and we're big, critically panned, although still did pretty okay at the box office. And then
Not as good
Spider-Man,
as
the
the other
moment it
two, though.
drops, it just
Yeah,
sells out though. It's
yeah,
it just feels like it's unstoppable at this point. I don't know.
yeah. The Eternals,
Anyways,
the Eternals' lack of relative success compared to everything else is interesting, but they've so rarely missed like that you know that might just affect future Eternals plans more than anything else. So, I mean,
good
yeah,
point.
what do you expect, man? It's Marvel. I'm sure Doctor Strange 2, you have to imagine, will do big business in May, given the WandaVision setup, the Spider-Man No Way Home setup, and all that. All right.
Right.
Yeah, man. Marvel does their thing. It's what it is, to quote Joe Pesci.
Why don't we move on though to the big screen? Licorice Pizza Dave dropped in select theaters in major cities this past weekend, and you were home and close to New York City, so you got to go and check out. I think it was the very first screening of it, right? Or like maybe the first one on a Friday, maybe the next
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
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 it's probably
yeah.
dropped on Thursday.
Licorice Pizza was only on 4 screens in New York and LA this weekend. It's going wide on Christmas, so a traditional platform release for an indie film, and did really big business thus far, which is nice to see because, as we know, the adult drama box office has been slow to return. Look at Belfast and Spencer and a few others at this point. It hasn't been too great, but PTA, in a sense, is his own IP, like a Tarantino, right? He has his fans. And at AMC Lincoln Square in New York, I mean, there might have been like 5 empty seats. It was completely packed. And also a really fun experience because that was in a 70 millimeter. All these showings right now are being shown on film. And that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, got to see the ninth Paul Thomas Anderson film, first one since Phantom Thread. It's been a few years. And also really fun and exciting because this film, previously titled Soggy Bottom, this film was kind of made in secret. We didn't really know too much about it until he had basically finished making it. And then, sure enough, here it is coming out with some awards aspirations. But regardless of how that goes, it's been pretty well received. And I have to agree, I did like the movie quite a bit. I thought it was really, really strong. And there's not a whole lot to spoil about this film. It's not that kind of movie, but I'll still try and keep it spoiler free here. But it's really just a classic coming of age story with some familiar PTA trappings, set in LA, set in the Valley, Encino specifically. The Valley, of course, famous or familiar to PTA fans as the setting for Boogie Nights as well. Uh, and in this film, set in the early 70s, right around the uh, OPEC oil crisis timing. This kind of have this two-hander going on. Cooper Hoffman, the son of the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, plays Gary Valentine, and he comes across, and he's like a 15-year-old kid in school, and he comes across Alana Kane, played by Alana Haim of the rock band Haim, and these are both of their first film roles. Of course, PTA has a relationship with Cooper Hoffman from his dad, and he also has a relationship with the band Haim because he shot some of their music videos. And something I didn't really know about this movie going in is that the rest of Haim is also in Licorice Pizza. Esty and Danielle, the older sisters, are in the movie as Alana's sisters in the film, and their parents are played by the Haim sisters' real parents.
Wow.
So it's a complete family affair. Really cool to see. But I think everyone does a great job. In particular, Alana Haim is really great in this. It's her first film role. Not that she's new to being on camera, of course. She's been in a band for 10 years, but she was really good actor, honestly, man. And the movie, honestly, is more about her than it is about Gary. But a lot's been made about this so far because Alana's character, Alana, is in her mid-20s and Gary is like 15. So there's not quite a romance going on here, but it's a bit of an attraction. They kind of grow and have their ups and downs together. This coming of age, right? Gary kind of older than he actually is, and Alana perhaps longing for her younger days. It's complicated and a bit transgressive, obviously, right? It's not, I wouldn't say it's like a relationship that's like overtly grooming, but it's not too far away from that either, I suppose, and I think the movie's aware of that. Lana has a line where she's like, "Is it weird that I hang out with Gary and his 15-year-old friends all the time?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's weird." Like, the movie knows that this is kind of an out there thing, but I really think the beats, the coming of age, the hijinks, everything about it is just really strong, and I really like the characters, especially Alana. Um, Along the way, you have kind of these detours and side stories as they're kind of going up and down through their journey together, and more famous faces pop up like Benny Safdie, and Sean Penn, and Tom Waits, and Maya Rudolph.
Bradley Cooper has a scene in the trailers, which I'm very
Yes.
excited to see.
And Bradley Cooper, who was excellent cast. I don't really talk about any of those supporting roles, but they're all strong. They're all well done. And yeah, I think it's honestly a really awesome movie. There's one thing I really disliked about it though was there's this moment where this supporting character, this restaurant owner played by John Michael Higgins, just kind of like speaks like an Asian caricature in regards to his Japanese wife. And it's like one of those things where it's like the movie's playing this guy off as a buffoon, as a fool, as unlikable. At the same point, like, I don't know if like just doing an overtly racist joke twice at that, I don't know if that like really adds anything to the film. And I've seen a lot of that sentiment shared as well. So that part was definitely a miss for me. But still, I think overall the movie's really, really compelling, in part because of it's a bit unusual to see this relationship and twist on some familiar stuff that we associate with coming of age stories. So, the score is awesome. Johnny Greenwood's having a great year. He also did the Spencer score. A lot of big song drops in this, familiar for PTA fans. But yeah, man, Licorice Pizza, obviously a must see. But I think it's earned its reputation. It's a really good one.
Yeah, I mean PTA, just everything he puts out is pretty much can't miss at this point. The vibe I kind of got from the trailers, especially like because I mentioned that Bradley Cooper scene, and it kind of felt a little bit like the scene with Bruce Lee in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was wondering if this was kind of like a similar type movie where there's like an overall plot, but it sounds like there's just like a lot of like side stuff that's like interesting and fun to hang with.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You'll definitely get Once Upon a Time in Hollywood vibes from this. Definitely.
Nice. I honestly can't wait to see it. I'm very jealous that you got to go. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it will be by me before Christmas Day when it's supposed to be dropping wide everywhere. But If I can't see it till then, we'll talk about it in our year-end wrap-up because I have a feeling it will probably be on at least one of our lists. Why don't we move on though to Ridley Scott's second movie of 2021, House of Gucci. Man, there's been so much hype for this. I felt like there was no way this was going to live up to expectations. I mean, obviously a huge cast. Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, Jared Leto, Jeremy Irons, Chino, Salma Hayek, a lot of big names. So going in, it's like, okay, I got this awesome cast, got an interesting story, Ridley Scott at the helm. This better be great. And Dave, was it great?
I had a lovely time with House of Gucci. It's not as good as The Last Duel, which deserved way more people showing up to see it. But House of Gucci is still pretty fun. You know, it's kind of a part crime film, part family drama, a lot of camp going on, but still very well made, as we expect from Ridley Scott. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. This was, it's interesting. I didn't actually think about if I liked this more or less than The Last Duel. Certainly, I think in terms of my own personal taste and the kind of stories I like to watch, I think I liked the story more. Especially like I find the 1980s much more interesting than medieval times. But I've definitely thought about The Last Duel a lot since seeing it. I have to sit with that question a little bit more.
Screenplay wise, The Last Duel is very impressive.
Yeah. And you mentioned like the campiness of it. And this is certainly a movie that I think is like in on the joke of itself. It's like telling the story of the fall of the Gucci family dynasty within the Gucci brand. It's been, told many times before this, based on a book from 2010, The House of Gucci, a sensational story of murder, madness, glamour, and greed by Sarah Gay Forden. My apologies for the mispronunciation there. But it definitely feels like everybody in here is like kind of mocking the lavishness and the lifestyle and the way things went down here. But I actually thought like there were some real moments of like sorrow and sadness and just really like heartbreak, especially surprisingly really loved Al Pacino's performance. Not that I thought he was gonna give a bad performance, but like the way he was able to like tone it down, especially in like the boardroom or like the lawyer meeting near the end, and like really made me feel sad for some of the characters. I was like, huh, this movie might have a little bit more under the hood than I first expected. Did you have that same feeling too?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see in a movie with a lot of over the top stuff to see Al Pacino not being at the forefront of that. I like that. That was just unexpected, you know. Um, I'd say like the movie's quite long, you know, like script wise, like we probably could have toned this down a little bit, just because I think the ending is not as strong as the rest of the film, but you have just a lot of really likable pieces going on in this movie, you know. And I loved Al, you know. I love Al in general, but he was really good, and it's quite wild how effective Jared Leto is in this film. You know, all latexed up, uglied up as Paolo Gucci.
Hmm.
But man, like there's a sense of sadness around his character. There's a lot of comedy with his character and the antics and all that too. But honestly, I think it's one of the best Leto roles in quite some time because the movie just knows how to use him right, you know? And meanwhile, you have him next to his dad, played by Al Pacino, and Pacino's not on that level, you know? And you have Adam Driver in this, Maurizio, not on that level either, you know? And Gaga is definitely on the level. But like they kind of even it out with the performances and the characterization and stuff. So it's just really fun to be in this story, even if at times it's really campy, you know?
Yeah, Leto had by far the best reception of any actor, I think, in my theater. People just dying at his buffoonery. he's such a ridiculous character, and the way that he plays the guy, the voice pitched up, and he really sounds like, going back to another Tarantino movie, Glorious Bastards, when they're like pretending to be the Italian people, Dominic De Coco. Like he sounds like that guy a lot of the time, the way he talks. I thought Leto was fantastic, and you know, just totally stole most of the scenes that he was in. But you also mentioned someone else that was toning it up, Lady Gaga. Did you like her performance? I felt like she was definitely throwing 100. I just wasn't sure if she was hitting all the corners for me. Did you like it?
Yeah, no, I think without this performance, you don't have the rest of the movie. And I don't care about the accents, man. I don't really care that the accents
No.
aren't good. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to me at all, because the energy is there. And obviously, it's a very different performance from her, Gaga, in A Star Is Born 2018, obviously. But you kind of need her to set the tone. I think she does a really good job of descending into a bit of manicness at the end as her fortunes change in terms of her, presence in the Gucci family and all that. Yeah, I like the scene where she discovers the prevalence of knockoff Gucci products available for affordable prices. The way she handles that, I think that moment, that scene is really good when it's played off of Pacino's reaction to the same knowledge.
Yeah, no, it's super effective, that scene, and I agree. Even though I don't know if I totally loved her performance, I think it's because I was expecting more of the like seriousness of A Star Is Born, and this was obviously a lot less serious of a role for her. I do think she, though, drives most of the ship, even though there's a good portion in the second going to third act where she's kind of sidelined for a while, up until the stuff between her and Maurizio really comes back. uh their relationship issues comes back. I really thought Driver was great. I mean, he's always great, but he's just on like an unbelievable heater. I feel like he hasn't really had a bad performance in a movie in a long time. If I can't even really think of the last time I thought he wasn't good in a movie, but he's just like such a good straight man in this, and really drives things forward, I felt like. And it's weird because I feel like all these characters, and this is a testament to Scott's direction, you're really rooting for a lot of them, even though you know that the story is tragically going to take a turn. Like, I really wanted to see Maurizio just be happy. I didn't want to see him pulled back into the family. I wanted to see him and Patrizia just like have a nice life together. And see it kind of all fall apart is definitely tragic. And like I said, I think that downfall is underscored really well with Pacino's scene when he signs his shares over to I don't even know who that guy was.
The head
Silvana
of the
Reggiani or
was it
whatever.
Investa Group or something like that.
Yeah, something
Outside investment that ends up taking
like that.
control of Gucci as it stops being a family-owned business. To
Right.
the driver point, I like how the movie handles the change with Maurizio. Driver is really good at commanding a villainy a lot of times with his physicality, and the movie really subtly has Maurizio change as he cools on his marriage to Patrizia. Really liked how that was handled. I also loved seeing Camille Cotin as
Yeah.
his new love interest. She was, of course, really great in
Hola.
Stillwater earlier this year. Seems to really be on the rise in terms of her roles in Hollywood. Of course, the famed French actress. And I think another nice part about this movie too is it was shot on location a lot. They made this year during COVID, not even last year. They made it this year and really just crap this one out. It's honestly really impressive because it looked really good. All those villa scenes and stuff, anything in the Swiss Alps, of course, looks amazing.
The
Lovely
settings
lookout.
are unbelievable. Yeah, the settings, the houses, all the villas, amazing. And I keep looking at your background, Dave, and this just is such an important point. But the movie and all the costumes look like $1,000,000, just like anyone that's wearing Gucci obviously should. And it's so funny to see Patrizia's downfall because you just start to see her look shabbier and shabbier and shabbier after this like rise from like modest beginnings. And I think it's just done really well, and it really is just like so fun to see these different people from the fashion world pop up in different ways, and not in like a heavy-handed way. You see Anna Wintour show up for like a scene. Tom Ford obviously is in it, as you see Gucci's started their rise back to prominence and streamdom, but it's not really even mentioned. His name isn't even said until he's reading the article about himself later on. Like it's just like they kind of just throw these things in. They're not like, oh look, we have this guy Tom Ford that could be a great person to take a risk on. They're just like, yeah, this guy in Texas. Like I thought that's really well done, and just like fun to throw those people in there. So yeah, the movie's just fun.
Yeah, totally. I was reading apparently the timing of Tom Ford's the show at the end there. Apparently that actually had happened after Maurizio was already uninvolved with the company. But of course, for dramatic licenses, I like that they changed this. Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. I think to some people it's probably overly indulgent, and they probably just can't stand the Leto performance. I totally understand that. It's not the most refined film, not even the most refined Ridley film. Again, I think The Last Duel is just a lot more high-minded about what it's communicating, but it's a really good time, and it's nice to see this movie have a strong box office over the Thanksgiving week. A lot of women are going to this film as well. It's part of that's probably the Gaga factor, but I think that the marketing is probably quite successful on this movie. It's been we've known of the shot of Driver and Gaga in the ski gear for months at this point. But it's nice to see an adult drama catch on the way they can in COVID anyway.
Totally. I think like my only knock really on the movie is it's a little long. 2.5 hours. I mean, probably could have cut some aspects of it down a little bit, but overall that was great. Also, just really wanted to quickly shout out Jack Houston, who I don't know, Domenico. I just thought he really played Domenico really well. It's just like this like ever present, like looming presence in the movie. Also, we didn't even mention Jeremy Irons, but like it's just always a pleasure to see Jeremy Irons. I feel like he's playing the same kind of character recently, but just he plays that like grumpy old man so well. And the scene with him and Paulo, where he just totally eviscerates him and calls him an idiot, is just like gutting, dude. And then he pees on the thing. I just like,
right.
Oh man, this is exactly what this movie's going for. So well done.
Hell yeah. Apparently, actually, Paulo was a little bit more successful than the movie lets on. Of course, he did that. His fate, obviously, it remains the same. But I don't care about the liberties. The Gucci family is not too pleased about this story. I'm not surprised either.
Yeah.
Tom Ford actually was kind of positive about the film. He pointed out some inaccuracies, but he actually, I think, seemed to like it, which is nice to see. Of course, he is a filmmaker himself. Awards-wise, I'm not sure where this is headed. Lady Gaga was nominated for Best Actress last time around for A Star Is Born. We know what to expect from Adam Driver in that department as well. I think maybe it's possible. It depends how this movie catches on, but it's probably borderline for Best Picture. Too early to say.
Yeah. It's hard to say. The field is kind of starting to take shape. I mean, we're going to be probably talking about one next week that seems like a lock for it. You imagine Licorice Pizza, if it continues to get good reviews, probably is a lock for it as well. A few others from this year, so it's probably a fringe one. I'm actually most interested to see if Pacino gets a legacy nom for Best Supporting, because I really thought he was great in this. Definitely surprised me how great. So I could see that and would hope for him to get some shine there, but we'll definitely see. Speaking of that, Dave, what should the people be watching for next week?
Yeah, there's not too much coming up immediately next week, but the few things that are coming up are important, such as the movie you just referenced, The Power of the Dog, a top flight Oscar contender coming out on Netflix, starring Benedict Cumberbatch and others. Very excited to finally see that. The Jane Campion movie, first from her in quite some time. Also have the premiere of the 4-episode HBO miniseries Landscapers, starring David Thewlis and Olivia Colman. I feel like Olivia Colman has long been a must-watch at this point, so I don't even need to know what the show is about to want to check that out. And there's another movie I'm really excited to see. It's already out. It's been out for a little bit. It's Come On, Come On, the Mike Mills film starring Joaquin Phoenix, which has been slowly expanding in release. Beatles Get Back is out there right now. Maybe talk about that. So yeah, we'll find things. That's not a problem.
Hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Follow us at nostalgiapod on Twitter. And as always, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. We'll see you next week.